Hey everyone, welcome back to another Tic Tac Taiko. Hey Taiko soloists, I've got two questions for you. Number one, when it's your turn to solo, when do you start to solo? And number two, why? Those opening two questions might have sounded a little confusing. You start your solo when your solo starts, right? But you see, the thing for me is I question everything. And it's not always an endearing trait, but it's what I do, especially when it comes to artistic endeavors. I like to look at things that we take for granted and see if there's something to be learned by questioning it, by looking under the hood, if you will. Sometimes there's not much, or at least I'm not able to find it. But other times, like for today's video, I find a rabbit hole and it leads to more questions, it leads to creativity and sometimes even growth. Some of you might recall that I did a video several months ago talking about not playing on the one. This was similar but different. The idea back then was take a number out of a count of, say, 8, and then continue to play patterns, always avoiding that one particular number, or 2 or 3 numbers, whatever it was. For this video, the big difference is we're talking about one moment. Once that moment is passed, the rest of your solo is the same. And I guess another difference is this is specifically for solos, whereas that was more for just practicing patterns, maybe solos, maybe compositions. It was more broad in scope. You might be wondering, why would I do this? What's the practical purpose? Let me put it this way. If you start your solo the same way every time, you generally will play the same things that follow. Now, when you change that solo beginning to something drastically different, it's going to take you on a slightly different course. And maybe you're not there for very long before you get back to where you would have been. But maybe you spend time there. Maybe you discover something that's interesting artistically that you want to explore more later or borrow from. You don't know until you find out by doing stuff like this. This is a kind of drill that helps you grow artistically without it being too scary or asking for too much. So, yeah, this isn't true solo anarchy. Maybe solo mischief or solo rebellion. It's a start. You got to start somewhere. Let's take a look at different aspects and different ways that you can avoid starting your solo on the one. All right, how would a solo that doesn't start on the one sound? Let's take an 8-count solo as our example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. You would normally start on a 1. The easiest way to not start on the 1 is simply don't play. Wait till the 2. Let's slow it down and try an example. This is what it might sound like if you waited until the 2 before you started to play. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you can wait until the 2, you can wait until the 3 just as easy. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. You can see from my examples that it doesn't really matter what you play. It doesn't have to be complicated, fast, complex. As long as you start after the 1, that's the point of the drill. But it doesn't only have to be whole numbers, 2, 3, etc. You can play in between. How about the 1 and before the 2? 5, 6, 7, 8, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. You can avoid starting on the 1 simply by playing after. That's the safest and easiest way. But you can also avoid starting on the 1 by playing before the 1. You might actually play on the 1, but remember, the point here is when you start. If I start before my normal 1, then I'm avoiding the 1 as my start point. When you come in early, that's up to you. You can use the same guidelines for coming in late. Pick a whole note, pick a note in between, doesn't really matter. Let's say I start on the 7. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Or maybe I come in on the 8 and. 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Two things I want to say about playing earlier. First, that this is really just a pickup. You hear this in music everywhere. Solos, non-solos, taiko and not taiko. It's very common, coming in just before leading up to the 1. Second, and this one's kind of important, as a drill, as an idea, playing before the 1 is something I think is a lot of fun and it deserves a little bit of play. But in practice, in reality, you want to be careful. You want to make sure the composer is okay with it. You want to make sure that your group, or at least who's in charge of the group, is okay with it. And think about yourself. If you have a solo and you've got a really cool ending, and then someone starts to play on top of that ending, it may not feel good. So you have to be considerate and intentional when you do this and where you do this. It might really work and it might really not. But again, as a drill, as an idea, absolutely awesome. It's also worth mentioning that in these examples, I'm playing up to the end of that first 8 count solo and stopping. But in reality, you would start, let's say, somewhere and you would continue soloing. But this video isn't about what happens after so much as when it starts. So the examples are short, but you would continue to solo normally. We just covered what a solo could sound like if you avoid the 1. How about what it might look like? Let's say, for example, I'm going to start playing on the 3. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. There's no rule here that says if you don't start to play right away, you have to at least move. No, there's no rule set like that at all. But it does seem like a little bit of a waste to just wait. I've got the whole 2 beats. That's a quarter of a whole bar that I could be doing some kind of movement. And maybe not a lot, no. But maybe I can shift my weight. I can maybe tilt my head up. I might maybe flare, like make a motion, lift the arm. Could be as simple as this. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so on. I'm making an intentional motion in the time that I might not normally have had. Looking at the idea of starting before the 1, maybe you don't play something before the 1, but maybe you move before the 1 and then play on the 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is something that I'm sure all of you who have seen taiko have seen, and many of you who play taiko have actually done. The song says, hey, there's a motion that happens just before the solo and you do this motion and then you solo. So you are in effect moving. But again, as an idea, as a concept, what about moving before solo when it doesn't require a movement? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What could it look like? Finally, we get to how a solo could feel. We talked about how it could sound. We talked about how it could look. Now, could feel, this is a little bit of theater. It's a little bit of
acting. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you.
And this is where the performance part of taiko can come into play. You can have a lot of fun with this. For me, not playing on the 1 builds anticipation. Not just for me, but for the audience, ideally. And it is an intentional tension that I am generating. And I envision it as a physical thing, as a ball of energy that's growing until I pop it by striking that first note. The longer I wait, the bigger that bubble gets, the bigger the energy gets. And I feel like it's enveloping or actually filling me up and causing me to expand. This is a bit of emotion, again, acting, theater, but I like to use that imagery to get something across to the audience as well. Have you ever seen someone play odaiko, the really large drum, when they have their backs turned and they pull their hand back and it's almost like it's charged with potential energy and then boom, and it hits and you might catch yourself exhaling, like you've been holding your breath. That's the kind of feeling that I'm trying to generate, not just for the audience's sake, but for my sake as a performer. So maybe it's not going to be as dramatic as playing on a giant drum when you have a small drum and a short period of time, but you can still play with the same idea. Let's bring all three concepts together. I'm going to start to move before the one. I'm going to continue to move through the one, thereby avoiding it. And I'm going to play on the three. And during this whole time, I'm going to try to generate intentional tension. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. On the surface, this week's video seems a little excessive. We're talking about a single moment in time on one person's solo that passes by like that. And I've created an entire video based on that. Of course, I hope you do play with the idea of avoiding the one in your solo. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made this video. But I'm really hoping that there's some seeds planted and that some, if not all of you, start to look at things differently, things you take for granted in all artistic endeavors, not necessarily just a Taiko solo. That's very limited, but maybe in Taiko, in music, in life. If you found yourself thinking in different ways, new passages are opening up, maybe you feel a little more enlightened, or if you're just entertained, let me know by giving me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and please hit that subscribe button. And until next time, keep on practicing and be well.